I'm getting ready to turn it over to Heider, but I'm going to ask you all. We have gathered many of your questions. I have them here. Heider will try to address as many questions as he can in the hour that we have, but I'm going to ask you if you have other things to put them in the chat. And if we have time left over, then we will try to take some, unmute some of you and take some calls. I want to thank you on behalf of the Tarrant County Democratic Party for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me. It's always nice to come in and talk to people and take questions and try to debunk myth or clarify misinformation, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
And just give people a chance to ask the questions that are bouncing around in their heads and the concerns they have, and hopefully make it easier for everyone. At least give you the right information, and so you know what you can and can't do, and seize the opportunities you have to vote.
I'm getting ready to turn it over to Heider, but I'm going to ask you all. We have gathered many of your questions. I have them here. Heider will try to address as many questions as he can in the hour that we have, but I'm going to ask you if you have other things to put them in the chat. And if we have time left over, then we will try to take some, unmute some of you and take some calls. But anyway, welcome, Heider. I want to thank you on behalf of the Tarrant County Democratic Party for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me. It's always nice to come in and talk to people and take questions and try to debunk myth or clarify misinformation, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
And just give people a chance to ask the questions that are bouncing around in their heads and the concerns they have, and hopefully make it easier for everyone. At least give you the right information, and so you know what you can and can't do, and seize the opportunities you have to vote.
Yeah. So Heider, I know that there's a lot going on at elections, so I am going to ask you anything new you want to tell us for the upcoming November election, and then we'll immediately swivel over to anything new with vote by mail.
So there's a lot. Obviously, with COVID-19 looming around, we did a lot of changes back in July. It was kind of a little controlled experiment for some of these things that we had to implement.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who voted, you saw some of them: the hand sanitizer, the use of masks. The poll workers had face shields, the social distancing, and so it worked out pretty well. I think the majority of the voters that participated had a favorable reaction with that. Voting in person seems to have met the goal of trying to be as expedited as possible, have enough protocols to protect voters and poll workers, but have protocols that were simplified enough that they didn't become a burden on the process, right? So what we didn't want to do was, we did not want to end up doing was something where it took 10 minutes per person to clean up and then 30 seconds to vote, to exaggerate it, right? So I think we found that sweet spot there of, look, this is effective. This is simple enough that it doesn't transform the voting experience and scare people away, but it protects voters who come in to vote. And so then after that, we got the CARES Grant Act money. We ended up getting over $2 million between the grant and the matching funds that we had. And we invested that basically in two big parts, right? We invested a lot in getting equipment to increment our capacity to deal with vote by mail. And there's a court session where I presented to the court, how I planned on spending this money. But basically it was the idea of, we are going to get more vote by mail in the office. And even if back then in July and June, we didn't know what was going to happen in the courts, but we did know, even if nothing changes, people who maybe prefer to vote in person, some of them are going to vote by mail, just out of caution. Some people are not going to be in their houses because they're probably taking care of relatives in another state or in another county. So we knew there was going to be a higher volume. And so we broke down the problem, and how do we do this? Well, there's going to be more forms coming in. We got to be able to deal with more forms. There's going to be more ballots to print and mail out. There's going to be more ballots to process when they return. And so we bought equipment for processing faster the envelopes that we prepare in-house to mail out. We brought extra ballot printers. We brought extra ballot scanners. and we bought a mail sorter. It's actually coming in next week. It's a big machine that sorts the mail, so that if we get 20,000 pieces of mail in a day, we should be able to sort them out, scan them, index them, and process them in time, right? We don't get a hall pass if we have too much mail. We have to finish canvassing on the same day, period. So the goal was we got to be able to process more, and so that equipment helps us with that. The other thing we did was, okay, we buy all this equipment and we can print, say, go from 3,000 ballots a day to 7,000, 8,000 ballots a day out the door. What happens the day we get 20,000 requests? And so we also put out a bid and entered into contract with a certified ballot print shop. And so what happens with that is if we have a queue of ballots to print that is too large, we can give it to them and they put them in the mail within the next 3 days. Right now, we have over 40,000 annual requests on file. And we're still, what is it today? September 2nd, we're still at least 20 days from giving that data to the vendor. I think we're going to be way over 50,000 ballots to mail out. And we did like 42 or 43,000 in 2016. So, I mean, we're clearly doing more and getting more requests. And so the strategy there was we can't take 15 days to get these 50,000 ballots out if that were to happen, and it's happening. So we're going to give the vendor the data around September 22nd, and they should all hit the mail on the 25th. And so before September 30th, everyone who's requested a ballot by that date of September 20, 21st, 22nd, whenever we do the cut and hand over the data, should be receiving it in the mail. And that was the goal, to open that window of opportunity to get the ballot and get it out. And then we did some other purchases, more computers for the ballot board room. If we get more ballots, the ballot board's going to have to grow in size to be able to process them all and deliver in time their work. And so in the last part of the money that we haven't spent, we're going to use to, some of it, we were just doing little assessment on the parking lot today to create some sort of a drive-through process for dropping off ballots. That wasn't something that could be done in the past, or that a lot of people used. So we're going to buy some tents and probably have to hire some extra people and cones and things to just make sure that when that happens, we can actually make it work. And I'll tell you in a minute why that was sort of a concern. And then we still have, I think, about $400,000 left, and we're going to use that to hire extra help at polling places. Some schools are, talking to us about their concerns of having kids in the election and COVID, and so we're thinking, well, okay, we've got some money. How do we work this out so that everybody has peace of mind when we go to the election? So that's a little bit of what's going on, how we're preparing for all this situation. But I'm pretty sure that you want to focus on vote by mail because that was the heart of it, right?
No, good. No, Heider, that was a perfect lead in. Okay. And so one of the things that you did talk about was, you mentioned a couple of vote by mail things, but before we get into it, we've got 63 folks on the line. And so I don't want to assume that anybody's an expert on vote by mail. So would you kind of talk us through the process? I mean, somebody says, I want to vote by mail. I'm 68 and I don't want to vote in person. Kind of walk us through what happened so we're all on the same page.
Okay, so vote by mail is available to people who meet the eligibility criteria defined in the Texas Elections Code. And there's 4 criteria: 65 or older, have a disability, you're not going to be in the county through the early voting period or election day, you're absent from the county, so you're out for work for whatever reason, or you are in jail but without a completing trial and without a sentence, right? You're not convicted of a felony. So you're awaiting trial, for example, and you're in jail, you're entitled to get a ballot and vote it by mail. So if you're in one of those 4 categories, the law requires that you fill out or that you make a petition, an application, right? People, the most common form is to fill out the form that is the application. And I want to stop here for a minute to talk about the exact wording in the law is not that you have to use the form, but that you have to send us an application that contains a series, of information elements that are defined. So basically, you can take a blank piece of paper, and if you write exactly what the law says you have to, we take it. That's an informal application, and we have to take it, and we receive it. And the reason I'm saying this is because actually I was seeing on social media today some concerns about mailers going out That's been common practice that has been done forever. Campaigns designed their mailers, and they have, kind of a made by themselves form on the back. And so, it says vote for John Doe, and on the back it says, and you can use this as a form to apply for a ballot by mail. That's perfectly legal. That's doable. It's always been done. Okay. But whether it's the official form, one of these, or your own informal application, we need to get a piece of paper that has your information and your signature. That's the most important part. We need a signed paper, and you have to mail it to us. You can also bring it in. October 12th is the last day you can bring in that application in person to our office if you prefer to do that. Because on October 13th, early voting starts, and this is an early voting location. So the law says, at that point, if you're here delivering it, you might as well just vote in person, because this office is going to be an early voting location. So that application comes in, we take it and we process it, right? So we verify the data on the form, we verify that it's complete. So for example, if I send one in and I don't, and I say, I'm gonna be out of the county, but I don't give an out-of-county address to mail it to, that application is rejected, and we send back a notice of rejection to the voter saying, hey, this application was not complete, or it was missing something, or things like that. If it's all okay, it's entered into the system and it goes into this queue that we have. And when it comes time to start printing out ballots, we basically just start pulling from that list, creating the ballots and putting them in the mail. When that ballot is mailed to the voter, it's going to get to you in a packet that has inside of it the ballot, the return envelope, and a couple of inserts explaining your rights as a voter and what you have to do to fill it out. So the voter takes the ballot, you mark what you want to mark on the ballot, fold it, put it inside. There's two envelopes, okay, a gray one and a yellow one. You're going to put the ballot inside the gray one, seal that one, put the gray inside the yellow, and then you're going to sign and seal the yellow one that's already addressed to us and put that one in the mail. And the reason for that is when the ballot comes back, the outside one, the carrier, the yellow one, has your name on it. So when we pull out the gray, we don't know what's in your ballot. We can't see how you voted, right? We verified your identity, and those gray envelopes are put in a stack and they're all mixed. And at that point, when we finally open them, we don't know whose ballot we're seeing because it's separated from the one that has the voter's name. That's why you have two envelopes provided to you. It's to protect your identity so that the people that are pulling the ballots from the envelopes cannot see the ballot at the point with which they have your name in front of them, right? So that's the process, and that's how they come in.
Okay, let me stop you really quickly because I noticed there were two questions in chat about the signature. So once the voter signs that yellow envelope, and I noticed we had one from Ralph Torres, one of our precinct chairs, who said their signature has changed because they're ill, they have a debilitating illness. And so talk about the signature and how you match that up, because people think that their thing gets rejected, okay?
Okay. So we don't process the signature. The way the Texas Elections Code is written in general, most of these validation and crucial steps are taken in a way in which you always have the two parties together. So think about the precinct judges. You have an alternate from a judge from one party and an alternate from another. The same thing happens with the ballot board, right? So there's a body called the ballot board, which is appointed by the elections board, which Deborah is part of and I'm part of, and it's made of equal parts of Republicans and Democrats. And then when they are working, they split in pairs. And there are members who are from the Green and Libertarian parties as well. And so they split in pairs where the two people sitting together are not from the same party. So you can have a Republican and a Democrat, a Green and a Democrat, a Libertarian and a Republican, but they don't work alone. You never have a single person working with a ballot. This board, then, what happens is that the ballots get distributed between them. The signature verification committee, let me go back. There's a signature committee first and then the board. In Tarrant County, it's the same people, but conceptually they're separated. These two people, right, pick up an envelope, and what happens is after we scan it with this mail sorter that we bought and everything, the screen for them basically displays, here's two signatures, the one that came in the envelope and the one from the application for this voter. And so they're looking at those two and they're saying, yeah, that's a match or that's not a match. If they have questions about the signature, whether it matches or not, the system allows them to pull 6 years of history of signatures and say, well, it doesn't look like the one on the application, but it does look a lot like this one on your voter registration card. So they have a few other documents that the voter has produced in the last 6 years to look at to see if they find a match. If they're not convinced that that signature is a match, they question it. They say, you know what, this one's not approved. It's kind of needs a second look. The approved ones are approved, that's unquestionable. The ballots then move to the ballot board. And the ballot board, their role is to grab all the question ones, and they get together, all 12, I think we're probably gonna end up having 24 people this time, and they vote on whether to accept or not a ballot. So it's no longer 1 and 1, the 2 people that are looking at it, they can question it, but the final yay or nay on a ballot that was questioned comes from the ballot board as a whole, and is a majority vote. And so they do the same thing. They look at the records, they discuss about it, and then they finally take a vote and they decide this one's accepted or this one's rejected because we consider it a non-match. And if it's an unmatched, that envelope is never opened. It's stored as, you know, as it came in for the 36 months that we keep all records of the election.
Okay, so that was that question. So now you can keep going. Okay, so can you tell our listeners, can you remember how many ballots were rejected in the primary? It
was 50 something on the runoff. I don't remember the primary. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. I know that
we've had a very low rejection rate, I would say. That, you know, compared to what I saw when I was in California and other states, I think it's pretty low, but I'll get the firm numbers and probably share them with you so you can share them with the attendees via email.
Yes. Would you do that? Because I know that's a question that people are concerned about, that their ballot might be rejected. Okay, so that was good. So I stopped you, so I apologize.
No.
Okay. So I know you said, so let me ask a question that came up. There were 2 questions that came up, and I think, Blake, we might have answered your question in the chat. But what is the time period after you said right now we have what, almost 50,000 applications, and those will go out on the 25th. The 12th is the deadline. So all of those that come in, let's say you get 1,000 on the 12th. What's the turnaround for that?
So for 1,000 ballots, we'll print those in-house. The ones that come in on the last week, we'll do those in-house with those extra printers and everything we did. We have the capacity to print with math we did, and what we did about 5,000 a day. So if we have more than 5,000, then it'll probably take 2 days, or we'll do a 24-hour shift the last day or something like that. But those will come straight out of this building. We bought the postage machines. I mean, we got a lot of new toys to play with for that last week. So we'll be sending, depending on the volume, right? The vendor also, the one that does the mass mailing, for them, it's not a business to do less than 500 pieces. So, but we can do 500 pieces easily in a couple hours in this building. So we'll be playing depending on what comes in every day. Hey, we got 5,000, like Monday, we picked up the mail on Monday, and there were over 3,000 applications in the mail.
Okay.
So that would have been a great day to just give it to the vendor and say, you get them out, instead of us doing it, you know, put 2 or 3 days of those together. But if we have a day where we have 100, we'll do them in-house and we'll put them in the mail ourselves.
Okay, very good. Okay, yes, Marva, yes, I'm asking the question. She says, will the questions we submitted beforehand be addressed? And so let me know if I haven't gotten to it yet. But let me ask a question, because I do have an annual application to vote by mail. But Heider, I've decided that I don't want to vote by mail. I want to go in person. So can you walk me through that process?
Yeah. So requesting a ballot by mail does not eliminate the possibility to vote in person. You can request a ballot by mail, but what's going to happen is when you get to the polling place and they look up your record, the electronic poll book, the iPad where you check in and you sign, is going to say, hold on, we mailed a ballot to this person, right? And so what we're trying to do is prevent someone from voting twice. So if you have the ballot, if you did receive it and you have it with you and you're like, you know what, I just don't want to use this ballot, you surrender it. You just give it to the poll worker. They cancel it right there in the poll book, and they send you right in to vote in the voting machine. If you don't have it with you, if you're going not because you changed your mind, but because you never received it or whatever other reason, you spoiled it, you don't have time to request another one, then what's going to happen is they're going to ask you to contact us at the office to verify that it's been canceled, and then allow you to vote in person. And so the idea is, if say that it's election day and you show up, we want to make sure that ballot wasn't run that morning right before you vote, because then you would be voting twice. So if you have it with you, surrendering it proves to us that you haven't used it. So you go in right away. If you don't have it with you, there's going to be a phone call to the office and they'll ask you, bear with us a few minutes. We need to make sure we cancel this ballot before we have you move on to a voting machine.
Okay, good. So another question is, how do I
Sorry,
know?
let me add something to that, Deborah. If
Okay.
say that you change your mind today and you're going to go vote on Tuesday, call us before Tuesday and we can cancel it in the system and it'll show up in the poll book and you won't have to wait.
Okay, very good. So you would just call the elections office and you would be routed to the correct person to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
I want to cancel my mail ballot application and we'll help you with that.
Okay. So Heider, how do I know if you all received my ballot and it has been recorded?
Right. Okay. So this is the sad news of the day. We did put out a bid for doing ballot tracking, right? However, we only received one response. My mind is blown by that one, that I didn't get more vendors to respond, and that offer, that bid was really not what we were looking for. So we're working with our IT team and trying to come up with a kind of a self-service tool on the website where you put in your name, your date of birth, some information, and it'll tell you, hey, you have an application in file, it was mailed, it is back, and was it accepted or rejected?
Okay.
And I usually don't say these things because then, if it doesn't happen, people get disappointed, but we're giving it our best shot because we certainly expected to have options with the bid and it didn't happen to track the ballots. For now, the best option, what we can do is you call us, we'll tell you, hey, your ballot was mailed out already, your ballot was received, your ballot was approved or rejected by the board.
Okay. All right. So this one just came, and Marva, this was a good one because I want to talk about ballot drop off. So there are a couple of questions that we've gotten from several people, but one is right now the ballot drop off location is on Premier. Is there the potential to have other early voting locations as a ballot drop off location? That's number one.
Yeah, the answer to that is no. So the way it's written in the elections code, it's pretty specific. It says the ballot can be returned to the office of the early voting clerk, which in this case is the elections administrator, and this is our office. So we explored a little bit the possibility of saying we're going to open a temporary branch office just to receive ballots. But it's very questionable because it's not really an office. So we would have to literally open an office where we offer all the services that we offer here, and then say, okay, now it is a real office. Now we can take applications there. And when we asked the Secretary of State, and they've said it in the webinars and all the events that they have, an early voting polling place is not an office of the early voting clerk. So ballots cannot be received there. They can be surrendered to vote in person, but they can't be received to be accepted to be counted.
Okay, thank you. Now, Marva's question was, the office is on Premier in North Fort Worth, and many, as you know, Tarrant County covers a lot of miles. Right now, it says only the voter can drop his or her ballot off. Is there any provision or any thought to let others be able to drop off a voter's ballot?
No, it's not. It's not allowed because part of the process requires validating the person's ID, and that's important to know. If you decide to drive your ballot down to our office, you're going to be asked to show ID. Now, we've asked and you have the same considerations you have for voting in person. If you don't have an ID, you can use one of the alternative forms of identification and fill out a reasonable impediment form. But basically, you have to show that you are bringing your own ballot in. Right? So drop boxes and things like that wouldn't give us the possibility to comply with that requirement in the code of validating the ID. But in other states, what you see in states like California, there are others. I came from California, right? So I know that one. They had unmanned drop boxes because they don't have the ID requirement. So you just drive by, drop it in the box, and move on. But the requirement of the ID is what prevents us from doing something like that.
Okay, very good. So someone asked, does the ballot require postage? When they return it, does it require postage?
Yes, it does require postage. The question we always get is, how much postage? Usually a forever stamp is good enough.
Okay.
However, this ballot's going to be longer, and it happened to us in 2019 in November. I can't remember the city, but it had like 40 propositions on the ballot, and we ended up having this 3-pager, and the weight goes over the limit. And so if that happens, we are in the process of putting together the ballot designs and getting ready to print them, right? So once we finish that, closer to the end of next week, we'll know, okay, we might need extra postage in these areas or in the whole county, because we got all of May postponed to November. So ballots are going to be longer than they usually would. We'll have that precise answer on whether or not a forever stamp is enough next week, probably.
Okay.
And we'll put it on the website and share it on social media.
Okay, all right. So one of the questions that we had, I had somebody say, even in your, Heider, in your very calm tone of voice, these requirements still seem egregious. And so that would have to be changed by the law and the elections law. And
yeah, these are requirements in the Texas Elections Code, right? So it's not like, it doesn't even open any kind of, let's call it wiggle room to have any authority to be used at the administrator's discretion or anything like that. They're set in stone. They're pretty black and white, I guess you can say.
okay. All right. So we just had a great question that comes in a lot, and I'm going to the chat. Eric Igwe asked that you please provide rules for someone who can witness versus assist completion of an application.
So the witness section is for people who can't sign them, right? So say that I had an accident and I can't use my hands, or I don't have them and I can't literally sign. Someone is witnessing, this person can't sign, and they even have to fill out the whole witness section. The assistance got due for someone who can't read, someone who's, I don't know how to read, I want to make a mark, or, the person's actively involved in doing something to assist filling out the form. The witness is just, look, I'm witnessing that Deborah can't sign, so yeah, my name's Heider, and this is Deborah's ballot. It doesn't have a signature, it has a mark that doesn't match the signature in the application, but I'm witnessing Deborah signing the envelope. So it's basically saying it's not going to be a match, but I'm telling you I saw her do it.
So, Eric, I hope that answered your question. So, but I'm going to go back. We just got another question. You addressed it at the very beginning about the increased number of ballots. And so we have someone who wants to know about counting them, the speed of tallying. Do we think we have enough equipment now to handle the increased number of vote by mail applications?
Yeah, we do. We actually have, before this, we had 3 scanners in house, and usually with one we have enough. One, we have like 2 in the room. One of them is a backup, and a third one that is the same model that we have in a separate room for other tasks. We bought another one, so we have 4. And again, a lot of it's got to do with how this comes in, right? If 100,000 ballots come in on the last day, we're going to have a very long night. But yeah, we do have enough capacity to do that.
Okay, very
These are
good.
high-speed scanners. Maybe that's where the question is. These are not, we don't have to feed them one at a time. We put in a stack of ballots and they high-speed go through, right? So the process is pretty quick.
Okay, so let me ask you, Heather, I saw that we had a question that came in on Facebook. I cannot see that. Can you unmute yourself and ask the question? I think it came from Councilman Marvin Sutton.
Yes. So if you can hear me, Heider. So yeah,
I can.
Yeah, this question came in from Facebook. Actually, yes, Councilman Sutton and his wife Raquel. The question had to do with COVID, like those people that have either been diagnosed with COVID-19 or they're under quarantine. So basically the process for voting or, obtaining a vote by mail application, say, and the early voting period has already started, or how can they vote before election day?
So before election day, you've got basically either you vote in person at an early voting location or you vote by mail if you're eligible. Those are the 2 choices there. I'm not sure if I understood the question.
I think they're asking about COVID as a disability, because if someone is in the 14-day quarantine period and you've been exposed to COVID and say, I've been exposed and I'm at home, I can't get to the polls. I'm not 65, okay? I'm under quarantine. Could I request a ballot?
Right. So if you are quarantined, what I would suggest is call our office. There is an emergency ballot procedure that we can use, in which case, because you got doctor's orders not to move, and so that puts a different angle on it. And there's an emergency ballot procedure that we can use. And in that case, what happens is someone, we can email you the form, so you save yourself a trip, but basically someone you trust brings the form in, and the doctor has to sign it, saying, say that I have an accident tomorrow and I'm bed. My doctor says, look, Heider can't get out of the bed, and I give it to my wife. My wife would come in here. We would give her, this office would give her my mail ballot packet, the same one we would have mailed you. Then she brings it to me, and I would have done everything, put it in the envelope, seal it, and she can drive it back and be allowed to bring it. That's an emergency ballot procedure that can be used for those circumstances.
Okay.
But it involves a doctor signing off on, there's a medical condition here that is preventing from doing.
Okay, because, and that is a question, someone had asked me that, if they've been exposed to COVID, should they go to vote in person? And I said, we really don't want you to go to vote in person if you have COVID or you've been exposed. So, so they would use the emergency ballot. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read. Bruce, I can't read your question. I'm trying to read.
I can see it here, and
Okay.
what I think what he's asking is, would some sort of other emergency proclamation allow suspending the election code language that requires showing the ID when returning a mail ballot? I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you, tell the truth. That's probably a question for the DA's office, but as far as I understand, only the governor can do these suspensions of the elections code or statewide law for emergency. So that would probably be something for the governor's office to address.
Okay.
Oh, Heider and Deborah.
Hold on a
sorry.
second. Rose, can you please unmute? Because our voter protection person has something. Okay.
Yeah.
Winter's on too. Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge the really difficult situation that you outlined, Deborah, in terms of a person who either has COVID or has been exposed and is trying to quarantine. And this is the really difficult situation that we are in this pandemic, right? And it is not, those emergency procedures are very challenging and cumbersome. We encourage folks to take advantage of them if you can, and to call the Tarrant County office and to work through that. And we will have information on our website as well. But the Secretary of State has made provisions that you can curbside vote in that circumstance, and that you can go and do curbside voting. And so I don't want anyone to hear that and mistakenly hear that you shouldn't go vote if those emergency provisions are not available to you.
True, and I thank you for that, Rose, because right, when the question was asked, I assumed the let's say the premise of I don't want to leave or I can't leave the house, right? But yeah, if you can leave, you can, and this is something important for everyone to know. The reason, and this is a question that's been asked repeatedly, why we can't tell voters you need to wear a mask to vote in person is because the position from the beginning, from the Secretary of State, from everyone, has been you can't create requirements and impose them on a voter to access the ballot, right? So if you are a U.S. citizen, 18, and registered on time, you have access to the ballot box. No one can tell you to wear a mask. No one can tell you that you're sick. No one can tell you you're not wearing the right shirt or anything. And so, yes, you can, even if you're positive, go down to a polling place and vote. And there's curbside, and we'll try to help, like, let's make this quick, let's try to reduce exposure, but you can't. Now, I'm assuming that we're all trying to avoid that situation, and so the emergency procedure, depending on the context, if we can trigger it and help the person do that, certainly will be beneficial for everyone.
Okay. Very good. I think Shirley Adams had a question, and I think, Heider, can you see that? She says, if vote by mail ballots are not received until October the 30th, with the slowdown in the mail, well, will it reach you by November the 3rd? I don't know that you can even address that because you don't control the mail.
Right, but what I can say is, the governor's proclamation, and this is great because it brings us back to something I mentioned, and I said we'll talk about it later, eliminated the provision in the code that said you can only deliver it to our office in person on election day. And it didn't set a starting date for delivering them in person. So the day you get it, if you want to drive down and bring it back and return it in person immediately, you can do it. So I guess the main message is we're going to mail out the ballots on the 25th. Say that it takes a week to get there. We're talking, you know, October 2nd, 3rd, something like that. That's a month before election day. I don't think there's a slowdown that'll take 30 days to get here. But if you're not sure, you can come down and deliver in person. Now, the challenge for us is, you know, that means that we can have a large amount of people coming down to our office to return ballots when we also have a large amount of people coming in to vote in person. And when we have our usual operation of having trucks coming in and out of this building to deliver equipment to the polling places, right? So, you know, our challenge is going to be to make this building flow in a way that is, you know, efficient so that the drop-off is pretty quick. We are probably going to set up some tents and the kind of a drive-through operation in the outside. So if you're coming in just to drop off your ballot, the idea is that you pull over in some tent or some spot that we designate, roll down your window. If you have your ID and your ballot, we check it, sign the roster, keep driving, never even get out of your car. We're trying to do that in a safe way where we don't have people, you know, running into trucks or running over voters or trying to walk into the building. So we're going to try to make that service pretty efficient. So if you were to get your ballot on the 30th, what I would say is just drive it down here if you have a chance, and we'll receive it personally. And then there's no mail delay or anything that can make you lose sleep overnight on that ballot.
Okay. Deborah Spell, I know you've got your hand raised. Is there any way you can put your question in the chat? And so Fernando just asked, do we have this information in Spanish? And if we have any of this in Spanish, then, and what, I know he asked about Spanish, but we have it in Vietnamese also, don't we, Heider?
Yeah, the information in our website is in all 3 languages, but if you'll allow me, Deborah, Fernando,
okay.
I'm assuming Fernando speaks Spanish. Si tú quieres hacer un town hall en español, podemos hacer uno y lo hacemos en español para la gente que habla español. Okay? I'm bilingual in Spanish. We can do the same event for the Spanish-speaking community if you want to, and I'll be glad to do it.
Very good. Okay. So, Deborah, I know you got your hand raised. Can you put your information, your question in chat? And then Rose just says on mytexasvote.com, it provides voting information for the Democratic Party in both English and Spanish. And I just want you to know that, but also for our Vietnamese community, our Tarrant County Elections has information for our Vietnamese speaking population. All right, so Patrick wanted to know about, and I see that you tried to answer him. Patrick wanted to know what constitutes a disability.
So that definition, and I want to pull it up if I have to read it
okay.
exactly, because that's defined in the code. Here's the part that that is important to keep in mind, and it's why we are so careful and how we answer these questions about, do I have a disability, or does COVID make me eligible to vote a ballot by mail? And the straightforward answer is, I don't want to put anyone in a position to do something that I am not going to make a determination on in the future. So, you know, and the way I say it to people is, I don't want to play poker with someone else's chips, right? Because it's not my loss. I can't tell someone, do this. It sounds reasonable to me because I'm not the AG or the DA or any kind of authority that's going to decide whether to prosecute you or not. And so the way the code is written, it basically puts the decision of whether or not you have a disability on the voter. And the definition, it says a sickness or physical condition that prevents the voter from appearing at a polling place on election day without likelihood of needing personal assistance or of injuring the voter's health. And so that's as far as I can go to tell you, here's what the definition is. And if you believe it fits you, then yes, you can claim disability. But I know, and it's frustrating, believe me, it's as frustrating to us as it is to you, to call us and say, I want you to tell me if this meets the definition. We won't answer that because we won't be the ones to stand by that decision in the future if it comes to that. We don't make that determination, and I don't think it's fair to put someone in a position to have to face that. Like I said, it's betting someone else's money, and that is really not something we want to do.
Okay, so Heider, I know you've already answered this, but I just want to go through this again. Christina just said, I just received my mail ballot request form. What is the due date in order to receive a ballot? And can I vote by mail or return the ballot to the Tarrant County clerk? But I just really want you to give the dates again to send your request form in.
You can send your request form right now. That's my advice to everyone. The minute you have it ready, take it to the post office or bring it down here if you want to. Don't wait. Don't wait. Think about it as, you know, you have $1 million winning lottery ticket in your hands and you have 30 days to cash it. I don't know you, but I'd be cashing that thing tomorrow. I want to wait till day 29 to try to cash it. Because if something goes wrong on day 29, I want my $1 million, right? So I'm going tomorrow to do that. That's how you should treat that application. Just mail it in tomorrow or bring it down here to us so that it's in the queue, so the ballot, because what we're trying to do here is make sure that your ballot is mailed to you as soon as possible, so you have a bigger time frame to mail it back if you have no choice but to mail it back, right? Or to drive it in, or to think about what you want to do with your ballot. Some people want it, you know, in front of them when they're watching the debates, and that's fine. But the important thing is we're trying to open that window for you, and the way to keep that window as big as possible is to request it as early as possible, and that's right now. Now, if you can't do it, you can bring it in person up until October 12th. If you come in here in our office on October 13 and say, I want to deliver this application, we can't receive it in person. You have to mail it, or you can vote in person right here. Since you're in the office, we're going to say, this is a polling place. Why don't you vote right now? You can still mail it, and we can receive it up until October 20. Let me pull out the exact date. If it comes in through the mail, we can receive them all the way down to, I'll give you that date in 1 second. I don't want to say the wrong date here. October, it's the 23rd. Yes. So if you put it in the mail and it gets to us when we pick up the mail on the 23rd in the evening, that's valid, no matter when you mail it. If we pick it up on the 24th, it's not valid. Okay, so then, you know, that's a last minute window that you have there. The only applications that we can get in the mail past the 23rd are those for voters who emailed us a copy, and that opens like a 4-day extra window. So it kind of pushes the deadline 4 days, but we have to have the email on the 23rd to say, okay, we'll wait for it until the 27th. That is something the law allows us to do. But again, it's a lot of deadlines. Get the form now, mail it in now. That's the best thing you can do.
Thank you. And that's why I tell people, I know people that get their ballots and they sit there and they let them sit around and for several weeks before they even open them. And so I'm with you. I'm encouraging people, once you get the ballot, please don't wait. Get it, vote your ballot and mail it back in. So
and I see a question in the chat that I think it's interesting to talk about. When are mail ballots counted?
Yes,
And if I can have 2 or 3 minutes for that, I'd love it, because I've heard people say, you know, I don't know if I want to vote by mail because they count those after election night and they don't count, or that's not true. Actually, on election night at 7 p.m., the first thing we post is every mail ballot that we have received and every early vote that was cast in person. So they actually become public before everything that happens on election day. The only mail ballots, the only counts from mail ballots that would not be posted at 7 p.m. are those from ballots, say that we go and pick up the mail at 5 p.m. in the post office and we have 50,000 ballots. We won't have them ready by 7. Now we have to count them before we leave that night. So you might see at midnight, at 1 a.m., the mail ballot numbers bump up a little bit. That's the last minute bulk that came in. But ballots that come in before election day, they're posted at 7 p.m. Those are the first to be posted.
And so Fernando got dropped off for a second and he said, was my question answered? Yes, it was. Heider answered it beautifully in Spanish and said, if we need to do another session, Fernando, just in Spanish, he is happy to do that. Did that answer your question? Okay. All right, good. He said, oh, they said yes. All right. So I'm just trying to see if we have any other questions. Some of you want to know, is this session being recorded? And yes, it is. We'll post it to the YouTube channel and Facebook. It'll be on our page, Tarrant County Democratic Party, on Facebook Live. And so I think I have asked, I'm gone through and trying to look at all your pre-submitted questions. Okay, so somebody wants to be sure, you know, how can I be sure you got my application to vote by mail?
Right now, you can call us and we look it up and we see it in the system. And hopefully, if we can finish that change on the website, you will eventually be able to look it up by yourself. But right now, just call us. The number is 831-8683. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, and okay, I think I've gone through all of them. Let me check the chat and see.
I think
So
people have questions about postage and
uh-huh.
the turnaround time from when the application is received to when ballots get sent out.
Okay, well, and I think Heider answered the question about postage. They are trying to decide now based on the size of the ballot, the length of it. And what he said was, and so Heider, stop me if I'm saying the wrong thing. It'll probably be next week before you all have an idea what the ballot will look like, how much it will, and then we'll decide if a forever stamp will do.
Right. So, and that ties into something else that's being asked here, the sample ballots. So just so you have an idea, up until last Friday, the Secretary of State had their time to certify the list of candidates and all of that. Since Monday, we've been working on putting together the ballots, right? So we're putting all these lists of names and races and districts and precincts and everything in the system. And I think you might be even getting them tonight. I mean, the parties and the stakeholders.
We got it today. Yeah, we got it.
You got them already. Okay, great. So those are the proofs, right? So we already have ballots for the entities to sign up. So the two parties have to sign them. You know, the cities, we want everyone who has something on the ballot to tell us, yeah, that is the language of my resolution. That is my list of candidates. You didn't spell, I don't know, Heider with a J, but with an H, we're good. And so after that, we have ballots that are, you know, ready to go on the website, to go for printing out, the whole thing. So they're coming. They're coming pretty soon. That's why they're not on the website, okay? Also, we are finishing the list of election day sites and kind of the inner workings, a little bit of a view of how the kitchen in this restaurant works. We also want to make sure we post them after we complete public testing. Public testing is scheduled in a few days to start. What that test does is we take all that data we dumped into the system and we print one ballot of every type. We mark one option for every, well, we print ballots of every type and we mark one for every candidate on the ballot. We run them through every machine that we're going to use, configure. We basically do the election in a week, you know, and make sure everything's configured perfectly. And after that happens, we seal the database. You can't make any more changes. If you make a single change, if you spell, you know, change Heider's name and say, you know, Heider Garcia Jr., you got to retest the whole thing again. That's the way the law is written. So we don't want to post anything until we've cleared the public test in case something comes up. We don't have to roll back and, you know, have anything there. So that's why right now we're in that spot where everybody's saying, okay, I want to see the list of sites. I want to see sample ballots, and we're testing them. We're like, hold on, give us another week. We're getting there.
Okay, so a quick question that was asked, several people said, what happens if you request a ballot by mail and you don't receive one?
You can send in another application.
Okay.
We'll get it. That cancels the first one and generates another one. We obviously want to track it. We included intelligent mail barcodes and a few other things for us to do some internal tracking. We were going to use that with a tracking system that didn't come through with a bid. But hopefully we'll be able to keep, at least from the inside, a better monitoring process on everything that is sent out in the mail. Okay. So our goal is to not wait for voters to call us 10 days after the fact saying, it looks like I'm not getting it, but for us, you know, maybe 5 days after we put them in the mail, to be able to tell the post office, how come 99% of this batch got delivered and these 3 haven't? Something's wrong, go find them. Okay. But we're going to work on that internally.
Okay. You all, please keep putting your questions in chat. We're going to, it's 6:51 now, and I wanted to give Heider a chance to wrap up, but a couple of questions you all asked about an expired driver's license. Rose has graciously put in there that an expired driver's license is good for up to 4 years, or if you're over 70, it's forever. Okay, so.
That's right. Out-of-state licenses are also good.
Good.
Make sure you know that. So some people, you know, who've moved in recently or something, I have an out-of-state license, use it.
Okay.
Can I interject and ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Heider, is that acceptable as a primary ID, or would you also need to fill out the reasonable impediment form if you had an out-of-state ID?
I think it's a primary ID. You can use it. You can vote with your out-of-state license. It's an official ID. I'll look it up for you and make sure we got it right here.
Okay. So Rose and everybody on here, now you know why I like Heider so much, is he does due diligence and always gives us good information.
Can we interject also?
I'm asking if you can put it in chat.
We did, but.
Is that Bruce?
Bruce, I think that's you. If you can put it in chat.
We did. It's under Jackie Cox.
Okay, let me find that. Okay, let me find that.
This is Bruce Miller and Jackie Cox.
It's under the question from Fernando Peralta and Barrios.
Okay. So can you find that, Heather? I'm trying to look at it, and see, Bruce, I recognize your name. Heider, while you're looking that up, we're going to find Bruce's question. Okay.
Okay, and I got it. Actually, the out-of-state license still requires the reasonable impediment, Rose, because it's not a Texas driver license. It is.
We can't hear you.
But you can.
I don't know what happened.
Hold on, Bruce.
Can you hear me now?
Bruce, can you hear?
You can. Okay. So, all right, Bruce is muted. Well, we figure that out. Just to make sure everybody gets this and there's no confusion. If you have an out-of-state driver's license, you can use it, but you still have to fill out the reasonable impediment, right? So the language in the list of IDs is a Texas driver's license issued by the Texas Department of Public Safety. And then as a type B, it says a government document that shows your name and address. That includes a license from another state.
Okay. No, Rose, you did good. And so Bruce's question, it says, Abbott can suspend parts of the election code. Why not ask him to suspend the requirement that a voter present an ID when returning a ballot, and also to suspend the requirement that hand return ballots to the office of the elections clerk, that they would let us use drop boxes? Rose, I'm going to ask you or Hector, because this is not really a Heider question. This is a bigger question. Did you hear me, Rose? It was, they were asking, why can't Governor Abbott suspend the requirement? Why don't we ask him to suspend the requirement around use of the drop box?
I fear that that request would fall on deaf ears based on all of the other requests that we have made of Governor Abbott and his administration to apply a rational protocol to this election, right? We have been fighting this administration ever since this pandemic started to allow Texans to vote by mail, like folks in 45 other states are allowed to do during this pandemic, and they have refused to do so. There's one set of rules for Trump supporters as they get their vote by mail applications in the mail from Donald Trump, and he rails against everyone else's right to vote by mail. So I hear you, and I think that in a rational environment, you are completely correct. Unfortunately, that has not been my experience with this administration.
So embarrass them.
Thank you, Rose. So I'm going to ask everybody to mute, because it is 6:55, and this specifically was to talk about vote by mail. And so, Heider, I want to absolutely thank you for agreeing to come on. I also noticed you just agreed with Fernando to do another one of these in Spanish, so we will set that up. The other thing I wanted you to know, that our Senate District Committee woman, Libby Willis, who also works very closely with our state party, just said you are absolutely fabulous, and you are great to work with. So please know that. If you
Thank
will
you.
continue to send your questions, we will reach out to Heider to get them answered. I promise you. There are only some things he can do as an election administrator, and those we will get you an answer on. And we can set up another call. Bruce, we can get with you to talk about another issue, but specifically, this call was to talk about vote by mail. And so any other questions you have on vote by mail, we'll handle those later. But Heider, do you want anything you want to say as we wrap up? And we are grateful that you took this time out. And by the way, that's a great tie.
Thank you. I appreciate all the nice words. Hopefully we'll build enough credit for it. We're human, you know. You never know when we make a mistake. So hopefully we'll have enough credit to deal with that, if ever we need it. But one last question I saw there about the driver's licenses. The address doesn't have to match. We always say that the ID is just there to prove that you look like yourself. It's not there to prove where you live. So as long as you have a driver's license, it doesn't matter what address it has on it. It's a government issue ID that proves that Heider looks like Heider. And then the last thing I want to say, you know, this is an era where people have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of access too easy to too much information. And the best way to fight misinformation is go to the source. If you have a question about elections, Tarrant Election in Twitter, look for the Tarrant Elections department page on Facebook, go to our website, call our office. You send something on Facebook, on Twitter, 99% of the time it's me personally responding. If we get too many, we'll have to, you know, get more people to help. But my point is, don't go for anything you read. Ask us. Ask us, and we'll let you know what you can do, what you can't do. The few times I've interacted with Rose, she does a great job. Obviously, she knows all this stuff upside down. But you know, from an institutional point of view, I want you to come to us first. I want you to ask us first, and then we'll take it from there. A few little things that have happened. Easier for people to memorize, elections@tarrantcounty.com. We changed that whole big address that was impossible to memorize. Keep that in mind. It's easy to say elections@tarrantcounty.com. We also have a new one, elections@tarrantcounty.com/voter lookup. Easy, so you can check if someone's registered. Make sure you know you've checked if you're registered at the address you're living at. That's usually the source of everything that people run into on election day. Oh, right, I moved 2 years ago and I didn't re-register. Deadline to register is October 5th. So please make sure you check it and update it by then. And other than that, if anybody wants to work the polls, hey, we'll take all the help we can get. All the help we can get.
So you're doing my commercial for me. So thank you. So October 5th is the last day to register to vote. There are going to be many activities coming up in the next few days. So please check Tarrant County Democratic Party to see that. On October the 13th, early voting begins in person until October the 30th. October the 23rd is the last day to send in a vote by mail application, and you can get more information at mytarrantvotes.com. I love that Heider is willing to take all your calls, but if you can't remember to send your question to Heider, send it to me and I will call him. If you want to be an election worker, there are links that are on there. And so please look at the links. Look at the links to request a vote by mail application and a link for voter registration. And so Heider, I just want to thank you for spending your evening with us. It is 6:59 and I think your wife and family would like to see you home. So we will let you know. But please send me questions and we'll continue to take your questions and we'll get those answered. But thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Remember, you can even just send your questions to info@tarrantdemocrats.org. Easiest way. There, we might have another session if Heider's willing. But anyways, I will be signing off. So big waves. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good evening. Have any questions?
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.